Manitoba's international boundary. From pristine lakes to vast, endless prairie, tracing 500 kilometers of remote American frontier. An open border celebrating decades of peace.
This is a fulfillment of an ideal that has existed for more than 100 years.
An ancient lake, greater than all the Great Lakes combined.
That freshwater outpouring was 6 times the volume of the entire Great Lakes today.
And the Icelandic Prime Minister meets the small community of Gimli.
They've managed to preserve the history and the culture of Iceland, and they are now able to teach us.
Now, we trace the secrets of the world's longest undefended border. More than 6,000 kilometers of rugged American frontier. Canada, over the edge. On the border, dividing the provinces of Saskatchewan and Manitoba from the state of North Dakota, a 1.5-meter obelisk marks the Canada-US divide. Obelisks like this stretch coast to coast, maintained by a joint body known as the International Boundary Commission. It is a role the Commission has played for more than a century, enshrined by international treaties in 1908 and 1925. Heading east, spectacular colors stretch to the horizon and beyond. The Manitoba-US border measures just under 500 kilometers. Like Alberta and Saskatchewan, it runs west to east along the 49th parallel. In the summer sun, these borderlands are an iconic image, the wide open western prairie, lining both sides of this great frontier. Far below, the Souris River crosses the Canada-US divide twice, flowing northeast to the Assiniboine River, Lake Winnipeg, and Hudson Bay. Further, the Goodlands Carberry Border Station is one of 17 entry points between Manitoba and the United States. And here, the landscape changes as prairie gradually evolves to low forested hills on approach to Manitoba Lake Country. This is scenic Lake Medigoshi. It is a haven for vacationers and recreational boaters. But Lake Medigoshi is unique, with cottages lining the international boundary. They are built so close that a cottage may lie in Canada with its dock extending into America. Further, we enter Turtle Mountain Provincial Park. The park rises 245 meters above prairie level and is home to more than 200 lakes. It was the first terrain revealed by retreating glaciers at the end of the last ice age. And amongst these rolling hills, one of the most famous Canada-US border anomalies rises high into the sky.
You going to mug me?
Am I going to mug you?
Is that gorgeous or what, eh?
And I believe I can run a decent marathon.
Thank you very much.
Download Veely now.
I'm the CEO of the International Peace Garden, located here on the border between Manitoba and North Dakota, and we're actually just standing on the northern side of the 49th parallel.
The International Peace Garden was the brainchild of horticulturalist Henry Moore, who surveyed the region from biplane in the early 1900s. He eventually chose a plot of land near Turtle Mountain Provincial Park. The International Peace Garden's grand opening would be one of the border region's most memorable events of the 20th century.
The garden opened in 1932, and it really was a world event. And here on the prairie in the 30s, the Dust Bowl, the First World War has just ended, and 75,000 people stroll into the garden.
My friends of two nations, this is a most notable event in the international relations of the United States and Canada. This occasion is both a fulfillment and a promise. It is a fulfillment of an ideal that has existed in the minds and in the hearts of the people of these two nations for more than 100 years.
Local people talk about that day. It was a constant stream of cars coming down to the garden, and they came from all over North Dakota and Manitoba. I think North Dakotans and Manitobans were just really proud of the fact that it was going to be between their two places. And the unique thing when we look here in North Dakota, when you come here, you're visiting the Peace Garden State. It's printed on every license plate in the state.
More than 8 decades later, the International Peace Garden covers 2,400 acres, accessible to Canadians and Americans without encountering border security. The garden is host to a number of features, including its 4 towers, built directly on the divide.
When you look from the east side of the garden, you're looking truly west here. You see two towers, basically, and that represents the relationship between Canada and the United States. But when you come up on the towers, you'll actually see there's 4 towers, and that's representative of peace in 4 corners of the earth. Just beyond the tower itself is the Peace Chapel. So it's one of those unique things between Canada and the United States. There's a few places in our country where you can walk into a building and go in one door and be in Canada and the United States at the same time. Beyond the chapel is what we call the Queen's Highway, and it's a strip cut about 5 meters wide that runs to the western border. It marks a boundary that was established over 100 years ago between Canada and the United States. And it's really interesting. We've actually put a pullover so people can stop and look and see the uniqueness of our border.
But the highlight of the International Peace Garden are the gardens themselves. Johannes Olvaka is a horticulturalist here. He's originally from Namibia and holds a unique perspective.
Well, I think from any person's perspective, this is a very cool place because it's kind of like a no man's land, even though it's technically half Canadian, half United States.
Olvaka is charged with maintaining one of the world's most famous frontier gardens, featuring the centerpiece Sunken Garden and the formal garden to the east.
Right now is our blooming time, the best time of the year. Try to represent the entire palette of northern prairie planting, to demonstrate to people what they can do at their own houses. So we pretty much try to stick in here anything that's available in terms of a perennial that'll survive in this climate, which is a pretty harsh climate. My job depends on the season, of course. In summer, I do a lot of outside work. And on a day-to-day, we do a lot of weeding, pruning, cleaning, pretty much just making it look nice and shiny and beautiful for people.
The International Peace Garden has existed for more than 80 years. In the future, Doug Heavener hopes the garden will become a meeting place and inspiration for those seeking peace around the world.
This is a tremendously unique location. And when you meet people come from other countries, and they're actually pretty emotional when they stand and straddle. Like in our garden, we can straddle the 49th parallel and actually have 1 foot in Canada and 1 foot in the United States. There's not armed guards. There's no German shepherds walking beside people goose-stepping down the highway. It's an open border, and it's a free border.
"75 kilometers north of the International Peace Garden, the city of Brandon lies in the heart of western Manitoba. The city, built on the banks of the Assiniboine River, was established with the expansion of the Canadian Pacific Railway in the late 1800s. Today, it is the industrial hub of the region. Home to more than 50,000 people. Heading east, we follow the contours of the Assiniboine. It stretches more than 1,000 kilometers, flowing through Saskatchewan prairie and into Manitoba. Here, the river winds its way east beyond more prairie and the sand dunes of Spruce Woods Provincial Park. Finally, 100 kilometers to the east, the Assiniboine meets the Red River. The Red River originates in the United States, flowing north along the North Dakota-Minnesota border. It has long been a transportation corridor for fur traders and the early Métis people, those with mixed First Nations and European ancestry. In total, the Red River measures just under 1,000 kilometers en route to Lake Winnipeg. Professor Jim Teller has been studying the topography of the Manitoba border region for decades. He says the Assiniboine and Red Rivers are the last remnants of a much greater body of water that once dominated the landscape. It is known as Lake Agassiz.
In total, Lake Agassiz covered more than 1 million square kilometers in Canada and the US. In fact, it was the largest lake in the whole world for several thousand years.
Lake Agassiz existed during the last ice age, a turbulent period that saw the lake's boundaries and outflows shift over time.
Initially, all of the water from Lake Agassiz spilled over toward the south into the Minnesota River Valley and the Mississippi River, and then flowed to the Gulf of Mexico. But as the ice that covered the northern regions retreated or melted back, lower points on the rim of this big lake were uncovered, and so water then chose the lower points to flow over, and at different times flowed eastward into the Great Lakes and northwestward out the Mackenzie River Valley to the Arctic Ocean.
And as the Ice Age came to an end, so did Lake Agassiz. The lake emptied suddenly and dramatically into the Arctic Ocean, changing the landscape of the Manitoba borderlands.
That freshwater outpouring was 6 times the volume of the entire Great Lakes today, more than 500 times the size of Lake Winnipeg today. So it was a lot of water. The result of that final drainage was to leave Manitoba dry, or relatively dry, and the floor of the lake was exposed when all of the water had drained away.
On the open prairie, Teller says evidence of Lake Agassiz can be seen in the rich agriculture of the region.
We're here on the floor of glacial Lake Agassiz in the Red River Valley of Manitoba. As you can see, it's very flat, and it's flat for hundreds of kilometers all the way around. It's flat because the fine sediment that settled out on the floor of this lake leveled out the land. The wheat grows in this area because the nutrients at the bottom of the lake, when Lake Agassiz was 100 or even 200 meters deep in this area, have been left behind, and it's particularly good for certain kinds of things like wheat. These nutrient-rich clay materials, this black earth, that very fine clay that left its imprint, gives us the evidence for this large lake that extends all the way from central Manitoba in the north down to the Dakotas and western Minnesota on the south.
Teller believes scientists can continue to learn from the explosion of water that saw Lake Agassiz empty nearly 10,000 years ago.
At the time when this last drainage flushed into the oceans, may have had a record that is recorded on the shorelines around the world, because when you add that much water, the level of the ocean goes up. Now, the level of the ocean only goes up a little less than ½ a meter, so that's no big deal. But if you have a very gentle slope and you put ½ a meter onto it, the edge of the ocean may move inland in a rapid way. While Lake Agassiz is long gone and won't likely ever be coming back in our lifetimes, other places in the world have a lot of water, fresh water stored, like Greenland and Antarctica. So if those waters abruptly enter the ocean, if those glaciers melt, then there may be an analogy with what happened 10,000 years ago.
The city of Winnipeg is located 100 kilometers north of the Canada-US divide, at the heart of former Lake Agassiz. It sits at the confluence of the Assiniboine and Red Rivers, not far from Lake Winnipeg and Lake Manitoba, the last remnants of this massive glacial body of water. Winnipeg is the largest city in the region and Manitoba's provincial capital. Its legislative building is the gem of the skyline, designed more than a century ago in a competition open to all architects of the British Empire. It was built in 1913, featuring an H-shaped base and a dome rising 75 meters, adorned with a statue known as the Golden Boy. The Golden Boy was sculpted in France in 1918, but during transport across the Atlantic, its ship was commandeered for World War I service. The Golden Boy would crisscross the Atlantic for a year before finally reaching its new home. And outside the legislature stands a sculpture of Louis Riel. Riel was one of the founders of Manitoba and a leader for the Métis people who populated these lands in the 19th century. Riel's execution for treason in 1885 continues to be shrouded in controversy. Today, the Winnipeg region is home to more than 700,000 people. It is a cultural crossroads with strong Métis and First Nations populations, making it one of the most racially diverse cities in Canada. North of Winnipeg, the community of Gimli holds an incredible example of that diversity. Gimli boasts one of the strongest examples of Icelandic culture anywhere in the world.
Today, the people of this region have kept the Icelandic culture alive quite well, actually. So you will find places named like roads named Siglavik, Reykjavik. The name of Gimli is the name of one of the halls in Asgard. Of course, then there's the last names like Helgason, Isveldsson. So they keep it alive quite well.
James Welburn is a reenactor at Gimli's annual Icelandic festival.
We are at an annual festival. No matter what your interest, they have something that will entertain you. Specifically, here in the Viking village, we are trying to recreate the Viking age, essentially what you'd find at an Althing in Iceland around the year 1000.
Hundreds of enthusiasts have gathered here, reenacting the culture of a far-off land.
What we help to do, we try to show some of the old crafts that basically are being lost in our modern age, like blacksmithing and leatherworking, and at the same time, tying people back to what we refer to as a more heroic age, where you had a hero that would go out and earn his name and his reputation and have sagas made about him and recount the sagas, and at the same time perhaps share a little bit of history in a different way that people get than just out of a textbook. It's something you can touch and feel and interact with.
You're very welcome.
But the highlight here is the combat demonstrations. In the lead up to the event, Welburn prepares his equipment by decorating and dulling his weaponry.
What I'm doing right now is I'm essentially decorating my blade, my handle. What I've found using this handle is the bone is just, it's a little bit too slippery. So I'm hoping to, by decorating it with this ring and dot pattern, it'll give me just enough tactile resistance to get rid of that slippage when I'm fighting. And at the same time, that'll make it safer for everybody else who's fighting with me, while allowing me to do more complicated attacks. Essentially, probably the most important step of us putting on any kind of demonstration for combat is that we are safe with our weapons. So what we do before we do that at all is we get a file, we check to see if there's any burrs or rough spots on the blade. If there is, we just file it off, make it flat and smooth. It puts on a good show because it looks like to the crowd as if we're sharpening them, getting ready for battle, when we're really just making them smooth and soft.
The reenactors gear up for battle.
The show starts with a weapons demonstration, so we go through essentially all the weapons that the Vikings use. Starting with the scram's axe, going into an axe, spears, swords, right up to the Dane axe.
And this year's festival is especially Icelandic, featuring a true VIP from the motherland. The Icelandic Prime Minister is well aware of the strong ties between Iceland and the Manitoba border region.
My name is Sigmundur Davíð Gunnlaugsson. I'm the Prime Minister of Iceland. The Icelandic settlers started arriving here in 1875. They were among the first non-English or French settlers in Canada, and they set up a colony, New Iceland, a colony which in many ways was unusual. It was almost independent for a while, so they had their own constitution, their own laws, and built up an Icelandic society here. This is something I'd heard about and had been very interested in for a long time, but everyone had told me, everyone that had been here had told me that you needed to go there to really understand it.
Gunnlaugsson says being in Gimli is a rare opportunity for native Icelanders. The chance to see Icelandic culture represented thousands of kilometers from home.
This experience is something you can't describe. Being welcomed by people who are so genuine in their goodwill towards Iceland and Icelanders. But this also is very helpful to Icelanders because it helps us to understand the value of our culture and our history. Because here in Canada and in North Dakota and in other states in the US, they've managed to preserve the history and the culture of Iceland, and they are now able to teach us, or at least make us realize how much we should value that culture. So it's very good for an Icelander to come here. Hopefully, as many Icelanders as possible will travel here, and hopefully we'll see a lot of people from Canada and the US coming over to Iceland.
South of the community of Gimli, Manitoba's rich agricultural lands stretch as far as the eye can see. From high above, the prairies of Manitoba are a rich palette. Colors and designs representing the labor of many generations. Manitoba is home to more than 15,000 farms, covering more than 7 million hectares. Crops here include wheat, oats, barley, and rye. The industry employs tens of thousands throughout Manitoba. More than $4 billion in agriculture and food is exported each year. In the southeastern city of Steinbach, agriculture is part of a cultural heritage, stretching back to the arrival of Mennonites more than a century ago. That Mennonite legacy is preserved at Steinbach's Mennonite Heritage Village and its annual festival.
My name is Al Ham. I live in Steinbach. I'm retired now, have been for 12 years, and I'm the senior miller here at the museum. I grew up on a mixed farm just southwest of Steinbach. Left the farm when I was 19 years old, but came back to Steinbach, and we've been in Steinbach ever since. The city of Steinbach was started by 18 Mennonite families back in 1874, and the reason for the museum is to continue to tell the stories of the Mennonites that arrived here back then.
Mennonites originated in Europe, but emigrated to Canada after years in the Ukraine. They are known for embracing humble, simple lifestyles, building strong communities, and embracing a philosophy of nonviolence.
There are Mennonites all over the world, as a matter of fact, but we live in the south part of Manitoba, which is close to the American border, and there's a lot of Mennonites in this area, and a lot of the Mennonites have been involved in commerce, farming, education, medicine, and we believe that we have made quite a contribution to the Canadian society.
Inside the windmill, Al Ham works as the miller, producing flour as it would have been done in the late 19th century.
Windmills have always been part of our Mennonite history, and this windmill is no exception. We are in the main level of the windmill, and just like many years ago, the farmer would bring his wheat into this area here, and we do that today. But the milling happens upstairs, so we got to get those bags of wheat to the second floor, and we use the elevator rope to do that. We are now on the second level of the windmill, and this is where the milling actually takes place. After the bags have arrived on the elevator rope, we put them on the shelf, open them up, and dump them into the hopper. And when we do the milling, the wheat flows from the hopper into this big round box, which has two stones in it, and by the top stone turning, crushes the wheat into flour, which runs into the bag downstairs. The wind is picked up right now and the sails are going. We can open the shutters or close them, and that controls the speed of the sails. They have to go a certain speed, otherwise we don't have the power, or if they go too fast, we could do some damage to the cap of the windmill. The sails can be open and closed. They're closed right now, but I can open them by pulling this side. And if I want them to go faster, I just close them again by doing this. That's how we control the speed of the sails. When we're not here, we don't want those sails to go on their own, so I set the brake with this single chain. Traditionally, the Mennonite people believed in a simpler, community-based lifestyle. They used to grow their own foods. A lot of people buy our flour, for example, because they like the fact that our flour is a natural flour with no additives, no preservatives.
The Mennonite village draws guests from all around the world, keen to see Mennonite displays, including sawmills, grain cutting, and a unique collection of farm technology from another era. Not far from the windmill, Melvin Rush operates a traditional German threshing machine, separating grain using real horsepower. Rush climbs on board and begins going in circles.
We have to start off slow or it jumps the belt on the machine. They can't start off with too big of a jerk. And they're supposed to walk at an even, steady pace, because there's a cable goes across from one horse to the other to make it so they both pull at the same time the same amount of weight. And that's what we have to keep them pulling straight as they circle. And that drives the drive shaft going to the wheel. When the horse walks around the circle once, the drive wheel at the end goes around 40 times. So when the drive wheel goes around 40 times, it goes around 4 times as many on the threshing machine. The machine underneath has gears where the horses walk that transfer the power by a shaft. This threshing machine is well over 100 years old. They have been fixed up a bit. They need a bit more repairs, but we kind of just keep it as good a shape as we can. It's kind of a forerunner to the big threshing machines that they have. But the principle is very much the same. A lot of people think as you go around here you get dizzy, but it actually goes slow, and on a larger circle you don't get dizzy for most people.
While Rush rotates, his partner monitors the century-old thresher, making sure these old wheels don't spin out of control.
It threshes out the grain. We put the sheaves in that have been made on the field, and there's a blower in there, a shaker. It goes through heads that take the grain out, and then it shakes out the straw, and there's a blower in the bottom that separates the chaff from the grain, and the end product is clean grain coming out.
The Mennonite Festival is a signature event for Steinbach. Al Ham believes its success is key for Mennonites in southeast Manitoba.
We want to continue the festival to tell our children and grandchildren and the descendants how we used to live and where we came from and how it used to be done. We hope that will continue with the future generations, and hopefully they will carry on that tradition.
East of the city of Steinbach, on approach to the American border, we survey one of Canada's most remote and incredible landscapes. This is the southeastern corner of Manitoba. Set between the Trans-Canada Highway and the U.S. Divide, it is nearly untouched. Small forested sections of land are interspersed with lakes, marshes, and wetlands, displaying colors that can only be described as ethereal. Finally, we reach a winding dirt road. It is Manitoba Provincial Road number 525, and it leads east to the United States of America. Here, for the first time, the border runs north-south, separating Manitoba from Minnesota's northwest angle. It is a tiny, unguarded American exclave, separated from the rest of the United States at the end of the longest continuous political border on Earth. This marks the end of the 49th parallel, dividing Canada and the United States. Some 2,000 kilometers from its point of origin at Tsawwassen, British Columbia, and Point Roberts, Washington. From international cottage country straddling the southern Manitoba divide, to the city of Winnipeg, to the vast expanse of wetlands in the southeast, Manitoba's borderlands are one of the last untouched treasures along this great frontier. Its winding rivers and vast prairies hold a legacy of culture. While its monuments and unguarded border crossings stand as a testament to enduring peace between friendly neighbors, here on the edge of Canada.